All right, what's up, everybody? Joe White Rostick here from Metro Praise International Church, also part of the ministry Stand Against Witchcraft, which is now being termed a new name. So don't get all upset thinking we're just standing against you. Remember, we changed the name to Acts 1919 Outreach Ministry so that you don't just think we're being aggressive towards you guys. But I have a special guest on today, Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy. So call your friends, call your enemies, call your frenemies, and get them to come to this live feed because we are going to have time for Q&A and open debate and discussion on the live if you're willing to come in. So get the ones you think are the most smartiest of the smartiest pants around that want to disprove what we're saying, because today we're going to talk about is Christianity a copycat religion? Michael Jones, if you don't know him, has almost 200,000 followers on YouTube. One of the top 10, if not the top 5 apologists on YouTube for Christianity. I've been watching his videos for a super duper long time. I've even played some in church about the mind, panentheism, the Trinity. So it's a great joy and honor to have him with us. So make sure if you're a Christian that you share this as well. And then Michael, go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know some of the things you're passionate about.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Michael Jones. I run Inspiring Philosophy. So basically, I run a YouTube channel where I make videos defending Christianity at large. I have videos on philosophy of mind, defending the Bible, archaeology, New Testament reliability, whole arguments for God's existence, a whole wealth of various topics. Side issue I do is I've also done videos on origins of modern holidays from Christmas, Valentine's Day, Easter, Halloween, and basically just pointed out none of them are pagan in origin.
Yeah, which is awesome because that kind of brought us together. I've normally wrote you to get your feedback on different things, but there was an area of difference with us over Christmas. And then you asked me to get this book, which I did. And this, guys, just this shows how real Michael is. So I get the book because I'm pretty much thinking it's going to prove what I think. Now, let me back up and say this. I used to believe that Christian was pagan because I didn't research it. Then I researched it and I just thought it had pagan influence. So when I heard Michael on a show with David Wood, and he said it has no pagan influence, that you cannot connect the dots from what happened in Rome to what happened in the Anglo-Saxons communities, where kind of some of these things came from, we started going back and forth. So I get the book. Now watch this, guys. I then write the scholar. I have the email as proof. And he has a quote, the scholar does here. His name is, what's his name? Hutton, Ronald Hutton. And he has a quote that basically defends the point of view that some Christians believed at the time, this guy from Syria, that it came from paganism. Well, anyways, I write that back to Michael, and Michael goes, that's a spurious quote from the 19th century. You can't use it. So I go back to Ronald Hutton, the guy who's an expert on Anglo-Saxon folklore, and he doesn't want to defend it. He actually says, well, I trusted somebody else and I can't stand by it. So I came back to Michael and I'm like, bro, you're winning on this. Michael, how do you, I don't want to use nerd in a bad way, but brother, how do you nerd out on nerds like this and you still come out on top? What's going on with you, man? Has God gifted you in a certain way? Tell me how this works.
I don't know, maybe. I really just like studying these things and tracking down sources and looking for information. And Ronald Hutton's a great scholar. I have nothing against him, but yeah, there is a bogus quote in his book from an early alleged Christian writer who we pretty sure was made up and never existed. So I mean, even the professionals make mistakes, and there's no shame in that. We all make mistakes, but I don't know. I just really enjoy researching this stuff and tracking that kind of stuff down. So I've gone through. In fact, I have when I moved to Tucson, I got a job here, and a lot of people that were there were actually from the German program at University of Arizona. So they spoke German, and I've been relying on them to translate some German text for me from like the 14th or 1500s so that I could actually read them for myself. So I really want to track down a lot of the original sources. It's just a thing I really enjoy doing.
Wow, that is so cool. I really hope some of our friends from the Stand Against Witchcraft channel will come. And so if you're here because of Michael, you obviously know what level he's on. But just to give you an understanding of why I'm here hosting Michael, and I'm so glad that he's here. Thank you, my brother, for coming. Mm-hmm. Our church started doing an outreach to those in the witchcraft community in Chicago. That's where our church is based out of. and doing some prayer walks, ministering to people coming in and out of the tarot card businesses. And from there, they found where we were having a Facebook page. And I'm talking hundreds, if not thousands, from the Wiccan community, the witchcraft community, the pagan, various forms of that, like Vikings and different beliefs, started coming on this page. And so if those of you are here as a fan of Michael, if you look at that page, you'll see some of the earlier posts a few months ago getting so much interaction. And one of the things that just kept coming up over and over again was like, Christianity's pagan because you have birthday cakes and wedding ceremonies and all these things that are really like unrelated to our core doctrines. So I tried to say, give me your best, and they didn't really give me a whole lot. But I still, as a good leader of a church that wants people to learn and even to help these folks, I said, let me get the experts on. Let me get those who study these things. So as we're waiting a few folks to come, Michael, I know you've done videos on the major ones that would come from the Zeitgeist. Can you talk about just a summary of those videos, Horus and Mithra and the others?
Yeah, this is a claim that's basically on the level with like just fringe conspiracy theory nonsense. Like, I mean, it's almost on the level of flat earthism. The idea that Jesus was borrowed from like Horus or Mithra. There's just no evidence of that. When I hear these claims, they come from the old Zeitgeist movie, and people today still assert it like it's somehow fact. Horus comes up all the time. The idea that Jesus was copied from Horus. But there's just no evidence of this. Like, I keep asking people for the evidence, and I never get any. So the claim Horus was somehow resurrected. No Egyptian sources say that. He gave a Sermon on the Mount. No Egyptian sources say that. He was called Anointed One, the way, the truth, and the light. No Egyptian sources say that. It's just nonsense. So it's a lot of the times they'll make these claims. And all you have to do as a Christian is just be a skeptic. Just go, where's your evidence? What source says Jesus or Horus was baptized by Anup the baptizer? There aren't any that say that. Horus was just basically an Egyptian god. He had many different functions. He was god of the sky sometimes, of the nobility. But basically, he was born from Osiris and Isis, not of a virgin, because there's depictions of them doing it in ancient Egypt. And then he just sort of became a god after that. He had a falcon as a head, but he didn't really ever do anything like Jesus. He never traveled around with 12 disciples. He wasn't really like a human. Like, he wasn't like a god who became human and then died. I mean, so a lot of people just make these things up. People will try Mithras. Now that name you're not going to hear that much, but he was like a Persian deity that was a Roman cult, then sort of formed around him. And a lot of people in the Roman army were in the Mithras cult. They'll try to make claims like, well, Mithra was born on December 25th. In fact, if you read Encyclopedia Britannica, they will even say that Mithra's birthday was celebrated on December 25th. Okay, to correct Encyclopedia Britannica, but they're just wrong. Roger Beckworth, who's a Mithraic scholar, says there's just no evidence of this. The Mithraic cult didn't leave us any inscription, any sort of like text behind. We have to sort of discern what they left behind from these vague inscriptions and what Christians said about them. But no early sources ever say Mithras had a birthday, let alone on December 25th. So a lot of this stuff is just simply made up. Zeitgeist movie makes up a lot of this stuff and then claims Jesus was borrowed from it. But it's based on just outright lies.
Yeah, and I was just scrolling through some of your goodies here. Yeah, let me put these up here. Yeah, so you have taken the time to do this. Now, have you heard anybody even come close to defending this? Because if you've taken the time to do the research, and I know other scholars have done it as well, why are people still repeating this? Is there a secret is there a secret behind the secret that there's more information that Michael doesn't know about? Or are people just ignorant and they don't want to learn and they want to stay with this kind of pagan belief? Because, I mean, you've done the work, brother. I mean, have you heard any good arguments defending this? Or is it just pretty much people don't want to change what they watched in that silly movie? Yeah.
It's easier to believe something that already supports the view you want than to actually do research and find the truth. That's just common for human nature. And we have to try to do our best to rise above that in all of our beliefs. Try to follow the evidence as best we can. And a lot of people, it's much easier to dismiss Christianity by just saying it was a copy of Horus without ever thinking beyond that. It's more comfortable for a lot of people, and why go beyond it? So that tends to be what it is. A lot of people just don't research it. They don't care to research it, and they don't I get told sometimes after I point this out that it's like, well, Christianity's still stupid anyway, so why should I care? Well, if you care about evidence and truth, maybe you should like get your facts right.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say, you do so well with philosophy and your videos. Some of those are my favorite, like how you break down the arguments against our proofs and arguments for God, or evidences for God, rather. And one of the things that you talk about is that we have to know the difference between causation and correlation. And if one is related to the other, how is it related? So maybe could you just share a little bit about the causation, or rather correlation causation fallacy, and how it's related in this? Because there can be a lot of correlations, but that doesn't mean they're causing each other, you know?
Yeah, there's a very common example people use to explain this is the fact that when consumption of ice cream goes up, cases of rape go up. Now, does eating ice cream cause rape? No, they're correlated. Why are they correlated? Because they're both happening in the summer. Summer increases both for some reason. Ice cream is obvious one, and I guess the right one because more people are out and it's easier to attack people, I guess, when it's warmer, I suppose. But you can kind of see the correlation there. Another correlation is a lot of atheists tend to be, or a lot of people that are autistic tend to be atheists. Does that mean atheism causes autism? No, that would be silly. They're just sort of correlated, but they're not causing each other. So sometimes you can see things in Christianity that will correlate to other religions. So, for example, there are serpent beings in Christianity. It's in the Bible, obviously. There are serpent beings in Aztec and Mayan religions. Does that mean one of them caused the other? No, that would be silly. So why would we think that correlations in the Egyptian mythology and Christianity, one caused the other? It's just as silly as trying to claim that somehow Mayan religious beliefs cause Christian beliefs. It's ridiculous. It's even more ridiculous to try to claim there's there are vague Norse correlations somehow cause Christian beliefs. So you got to be very careful with just saying, well, I found two things that are alike, therefore one caused the other. That's a correlation causation fallacy. I mean, I could find examples like that all the day, or all the time. The Trinity, for example, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Well, there's three of them. Well, you know who's also has three? The Three Musketeers. Does that mean the Three Musketeers is based on the Trinity? No, that'd be silly. You found a vague correlation, and you're then jumping, making a non sequitur to the idea that one caused the other. You just can't do that.
Oh, that's too funny. I see that they're kind of ghosting us right now, man. I don't see a lot of them coming up. And of course, after the video is played, mark my words, Brother Michael, after the video is played, all the warriors are going to come out and say, oh, if I just would have known, or if it would have been earlier or later, I would have done this or that. So maybe we'll see if we can get Michael back on. If you guys have a legitimate interlocutor, someone that could really come on and represent this point of view. But for the most part, Michael, I just see it on the level of zeitgeist, like you just said, Three Musketeers, the Trinity. And one of the things that I found actually funny, because when I started this in this chat room here on this page, is that a lot of people came with the Viking belief or a Norse belief, like you were talking about. And when I began to research, because no one mentioned to me that they could have possibly borrowed from Christianity. I knew that happened in other places, but they were just so strong on these correlations. Well, I go back and research, and actually the guy who tells their stories and writes them down, you probably know his name, was a Christian monk, and he Christianized their stories so that now they could see how it correlates to Christianity. So it was actually the reverse going on. And then when I brought this up, they were like, oh yeah, I know about that fight, that Nordic. Yeah, tell me about that. Like, just like how it actually many times with Krishna and these other people, it actually goes the reverse. Christian missionaries impacted those cultures.
Yeah, so Snorri Sturluson, he's a Icelandic historian, writing roughly, I think it's about 800 to 1,000 years ago or so, and he's trying to record a lot of the Norse history. He's doing a lot through Christian lenses, and so he's trying to collect things. There's other sources like the Poetic Edda, for example, these early like poetics or poems of like the Norse. But again, they're only about 1,000 years old. We don't really have text from the Norse that goes back before Christians, which says a lot. I mean, because the Christians were very They very much wanted to keep accurate records. They were very interested in history. So they were the ones doing a lot of this stuff, ironically. It wasn't so much the Norse. So a lot of it has to come through Christian lenses. Of course, they inherited that Greek, Roman, and Jewish history behind them that made them very interested in history. So yeah, it comes from a lot of that. And there's a lot of problems we have. Some historians think that actually the Norse incorporated Christian ideas in a lot of ways. So take Balder and take Loki. Some historians will say this is a Norse version of Jesus and Satan, just incorporated into the pantheon. Maybe some dispute that. We don't really entirely know, but they do sort of fit within the motifs in their own way. But in that kind of sense, a lot of the ideas you can sort of see we know about the Norse or the Northmen. They're going to come from St. Bede, Snorri Sturluson. There's a guy called Theitmar the Chronicler. There's also a guy called Adam of Brenham who was recording a lot of this stuff, and they're interpreting a lot through a lot of Christian lenses in a lot of ways. So we have to keep that in mind when we're doing this kind of stuff. A lot of them will note that a lot of the Norse sort of incorporated and took over Christian ideas, like Snorri Sturluson claims that King Haakon the Good put Yule on December 25th to coincide with Christmas. So it's actually the other way around. It wasn't Yule, it wasn't Christians borrowing from Yule, it was the other way. So, I mean, there's a lot of really convoluted, interesting things going on in there.
Man, that's so good. Yeah, because even my conversation with you about Christmas, I was like, well, maybe back up from Christmas, like days of the week. We can all agree that those are mostly derived from pagan gods, right, Michael? We could agree that Saturday, Saturn. But, and I was doing that with Christmas. Okay, Yule log goes back to this, this character goes back to that, or the horns go back to that. But even then you challenged me and you said, okay, let's just look at these cultures. Are they even trying in their own conscience to do that? Or is it just similarities, like you said, with ice cream and raping? And as I began to look back on it, yeah, it would make sense. If you're in a culture where during the winter it gets cold and you don't see much alive, much living plants, what plant are you going to bring indoors? It's going to be an evergreen type tree. But let's just say they're right on something. Maybe give them a credit on something. Like you said a little bit about the Yule log. Is there anything that you would say? Maybe it's a birthday cake, blowing out candles, making a wish, a wedding ceremony, something where you could go, yes, there are evidences that this actually came from pagans. Christians now do it. But then you would make a distinction and go, but this has nothing to do with core doctrines. Is there anything you could give them to go, hey, okay, there you go. Talk about that, my brother, please.
Yeah, wedding rings probably go back to ancient Egypt. I mean, but it wasn't really it doesn't have to be necessarily religious. It's just a symbol of holy matrimony today. They're just symbols people have incorporated. And I can even point to the Bible and say, look, there was pagan ideas incorporated, not in a bad way, but read Acts 17. Paul says, as some of your own poets say, for in him we live and move and have our being. Paul's quoting Menendez and Epimenides to talk about Jesus, to talk about the God of the Bible. So just because Christians may have incorporated pagan ideas or pagan or symbols that were used by pagans, that doesn't mean it's that all of Christianity was somehow borrowed or copied from pagan mythology. That would just be silly. What you're doing is you're doing a hasty generalization. You're finding very vague things that are not even associated with core doctrines, and you're running wild with it and generalizing about the whole religion. That's a fallacious way to reason. And look, there's no disagreement that there are pagan things still around today, as you mentioned, the 7 days of the week. I mean, Monday's the name after the moon, Tuesday's the name after the god Tuz, Wednesday's Odin's day, Thursday Thor, Friday Frigg. You get the idea. But I mean, that's not really a huge issue because no one is thinking that we're actually honoring Thor on Thursday. I don't understand how you can make that sort of leap. That would be a hasty generalization. And again, it's another way of incorporating fallacious reasoning.
Yeah, so I think if anyone's watching this that would want to come on, please start letting us know your interest and I'll send you the link. We also have some fans here from IP. Thank you guys for checking us out today. I know IP has a large following, and I'm always happy to see people come on over and check us out as well. But please follow his page. We're just doing a ministry for those in this lifestyle and trying to answer some of their questions. But keep liking and subscribing to IP's channel and Patreon for him to do this. Real quick, I mean, brother, you're going full time in this now, right? Hasn't that been your life for a little bit?
For about a year now, yeah.
Man, that is so awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, but just going back to this, as you're talking about these similarities, making a hasty generalization, I think that it's a thing, like we were saying before, that they want to hold on to because of confirmation bias. So, I don't like Christianity because of X, Y, and Z reasons, so I got to tear it down. Okay, let me find something to tear it down. Oh, Christians celebrate birthdays. Don't you know that's pagan? Therefore, Christianity is wrong. But I think, Michael, what you do such a good job of is showing what is the core beliefs of Christianity, and if we see the fulfillment into the New Testament from the Old Testament, it's a Jewish-based faith that has the story of a redemptive figure. And yeah, you might be able to find that somewhere else in history, right? But the Jewish Messiah, maybe if you could just hit on that, though there may be similarities between him and Luke Skywalker or other people, wasn't the Christians' mindset, worldview, Jewish? And if they would have done anything, it would have been in that context. They wouldn't have gone from being persecuted by Rome all of these years and going, hey, now we want to adopt your religion and put it with Judaism. Can you talk about how important Judaism was to the Jews and why just some of these things fall flat on their face because of that?
Yeah, well, just to really briefly touch on birthdays. If birthdays are evil, someone's better tell the Magi, who literally celebrated Jesus' birthday by delivering gifts. I don't see why that is. And I don't even think birthdays are pagan in the sense, because you're just celebrating something that like everybody has. How does pagans get to claim what everyone literally has? But yeah, the Christians were Jewish. The first Christians were Jewish. That was their main context and background. If you look, for example, there are over 330 quotes of the Old Testament in the New Testament, or paraphrases. Sometimes they're not even direct quotes. But that clearly shows you what they're mainly drawing on is the Jewish scriptures. They're talking about Jewish customs. Another key indicator is they're really focusing on resurrection. Jesus physically resurrected. He was not just taken into heaven. He literally came back in a physical flesh and bone body. The pagans really didn't believe in that kind of thing. They believed that you could go to heaven after, you could be exalted to heaven, you could go to the underworld. They had all sorts of different beliefs, but physical resurrection was something beyond the way they thought. There are some examples of different people being resuscitated, but they still are going to die, and they have to go to an afterlife somewhere else. It's very Platonic in the way they think about these kind of things. Christians were very much in their Jewish mindset, and the idea that, no, heaven will be a literally return to this physical earth for eternity. You will live in your body forever. That distinct belief is very Jewish, and there's very little evidence of people believing that outside of the Jewish faith. And of course, that's the central tenet. I mean, read 1 Corinthians 15. It's the physical resurrection. So very much Jewish in background based on Old Testament quotes, centering around the Jewish concept of the Messiah, the fulfillment of the scriptures, and the idea of physical resurrection. N.T. Wright's, like 800-page book or so covers this in depth, that the pagans didn't focus on that. They were more interested in leaving the material reality to go to be some sort of soul somewhere else. Jews were really much focused on the idea that, no, we need to return here and be physical bodies forever.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that when it came to the Egyptians. They didn't believe in a physical resurrection, right?
Right. Now, people will bring up Osiris and be like, yeah, but Osiris was said to be resurrected. Okay, well, what do these terms mean? If I told you my wife is a chick, do you think I married a chicken? Or do you understand that term can mean different things depending on who you're talking to and what you're talking about? I mean, likewise, the term resurrection, when it comes to the Osiris myth, is far different than the Jewish concept. So Trygve Medinger, who wrote a book called The Riddle of Resurrection, says speaking about Osiris, says his resurrection meant his entry upon life and the beyond. Osiris was thus not a dying god, but a dead god. So he wasn't even a dying god who returned to life. A resurrection to him meant he could continue on to the afterlife. Again, it's more similar to Greek thought than it is to Jewish thought. Just because they're using a term that sounds like the Jewish concept of resurrection doesn't mean they even mean the same things. And they just simply don't. There was an old scholar called Henry Frankfurt who said, Iris, in fact, was not a dying god, but a dead god. He never returned among the living. He was not liberated from the world dead. On the contrary, Osiris altogether became the world of the dead. So again, just because you hear the word resurrection doesn't mean it's the exact same thing what the Christians or the Jews meant.
Yeah, so good. And then when we get into some of the things like Michael Heisner, you're familiar with him, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and we as Christians are aware of this kind of Mesopotamian imagery in the Bible. Like the way I understand it is in Genesis chapter 1, most of the gods of Mesopotamia and of that time are coming out of something, coming out of some kind of matter or dark abyss. And here God is giving us the imagery that he is before all of that. He is not coming out of that, and he sits over it. And those kind of images are there, right? And then the Baal cycles that are in the Psalms, like how Baal, this false god, he was said in his inscriptions to ride upon the winds and have all of these powers over nature. It's very similar in the poetic references to Yahweh. How would you explain that? Because someone might say, well, it's one thing for Paul to quote the pagans in the New Testament. It's another thing for them to almost adopt the same imagery without referencing a quote or a source of these quotes. How would you see those things?
It's like if I said Jesus is a rock star. Okay, am I literally saying Jesus plays music on a stage and travels around the country? No, I'm adopting modern imagery to talk about Jesus. They can do the exact same thing in the ancient world. Baal rides the clouds, you morons, because that was a way to say that he is sort of ruling. No, it's Yahweh that rides the clouds. He's the one who's truly ruling. And it's just adopting imagery. That's not a huge deal. That doesn't mean they borrowed religious ideas or core central doctrine ideas, what we would call them. So again, they're jumping to a conclusion there based on just mere correlations and not actually thinking the type of thing through.
Amen, amen. That's such good nuggies there, guys. Just giving some shout outs to you, Jose. That's a good point about the Magi. Yeah, there's a birth and it's a day and there's gifts being given. I think what somebody had shared with me, Michael, was like, well, it's the blowing out of the candles and making a wish, kind of like the wedding ring. This thing specifically came from a pagan. This thing on the birthday came from a pagan. Aren't there things in our scriptures that the Bible says are adaphora? I can't really pronounce the Greek word, meaning in Romans chapter 14, they're not essential to the faith, that each one can decide according to their conscience. I mean, couldn't we give up a wedding ring or wear a wedding ring and still be a Christian in the same exact sense? It wouldn't make a difference. Couldn't we give up a candle or blow out a candle and still be a Christian? Can you just hit on that just for a point that there are things that are gray areas, and I'll get the Greek word as you're talking about that if you don't know it off top, where we're not obligated to research everything going back. As long as it doesn't violate our faith and conscience, it's acceptable. Would you share on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to say a lot because Paul already addressed this in an entire chapter of 1 Corinthians 8. He's talking about meat sacrificed to idols. Like, just because it's meat that's been sacrificed to an idol, that doesn't mean you're partaking in some sort of weird pagan ritual. God made the meat. You're allowed to eat it. These idols are useless and pointless. It doesn't mean the same thing to us as it means to the pagan. It's just as food to us. They may have some weird things they put on it, but it's pointless to us. So just because a pagan may have worn a wedding ring or blew out candles, which I'm not even sure goes back to paganism. As far as I can tell, that goes back to like Germany in the 1700s, at least the modern custom. That doesn't mean you're sort of incorporating the pagan custom or doing the pagan custom. It doesn't mean the same thing to us. It's like if I kneeled down to tie my shoe and I was in a crowded area and I didn't realize there was a Buddha statue in front of me. And let's say I was in India and I just knelt to tie my shoe. That doesn't mean I'm kneeling down before Buddha. I knelt to tie my shoe and just by relation to the statue. I didn't even know that it was there. I mean, it doesn't mean the same thing. Or think of another thing. Let's say I was in front of a Buddha statue and I immediately got sick and I fell to my knees and grabbed my stomach. Okay, that doesn't mean I'm actually praying to the Buddha. The meaning behind what I'm doing is entirely different. So we have to recognize there is different meanings in people. If there are old pagan customs that have been incorporated into modern customs, because they're not incorporated into Christianity, how we worship is different than how you may decorate your house during a holiday. So it is not even incorporated in these weird religious ritual ideas. But if there's an old pagan custom that is still sort of around, like let's say kissing under the mistletoe is. I don't think it actually even goes back to paganism, but let's say it does. It doesn't mean the same thing. It's just become a cute little game people play. That doesn't mean, and so the meaning has been entirely changed and different. And that's why we have 1 Corinthians chapter 8, which tells us this.
Yeah, so good, my bro. Yeah, those things, most of them can't even be pointed back to an actual pagan practice as an origin. It just shows pagans did X, Y, and Z, like you said. Like pagans ate ice cream, pagans did this, pagans did whatever. That doesn't mean I'm pagan if I do that certain act. Yeah, like I use the example. People wear black for different reasons. I'm wearing black today because I like it on camera. That doesn't mean I'm a part of a black witch coven. All people eat. Yeah, they have festivals. Most people have festivals around times of the year, right? That doesn't mean they're all coinciding together. You say it so much better, but I just wanted to bring this up here as well. John said, I think that it's a good thing Christianity embraces nations' cultures and is less prone to rewrite them or create a single unified culture. Would you agree, though, that there has been times where certain branches of Christianity tried to wipe out culture or at least make it difficult for it to continue? I would admit to that, and I would have no problem saying that there was evils done, etc. And by the way, that word that I was talking about is that the Greek word adiaphorism. It's from the Greek word adiaphora, indifferent, and that's where we get it from Romans 14. But yeah, can you just talk about that? Yeah, maybe some things were done wrong, but for the most part, Christianity, like even in America, has allowed days of the week or birthdays, and you don't necessarily have to pick or choose your Christianity over those things. How would you put it, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly historical examples. I mean, just look at the Spanish and the Americas and destroying Aztec and Incan and Mayan cultures. I mean, it was really horrible. We lost a lot of great texts that'd be very useful for today. I mean, just because they did that, that doesn't mean it was endorsed by the Bible or whatnot. Jesus is very clear in Matthew 10. If a town rejects you, dust off the feet and move on. It doesn't say go in with a sword and a hammer and start destroying things. So, I mean, I don't know what to say to these people other than, yeah, those were bad people doing bad things. That doesn't mean Christianity caused those bad behaviors.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, here's a guy saying, this is good. I've gotten into encounters with people that argue about Osiris. You were talking about that. So here's my way of looking at it. I know you and I have some differences. You would be more along the lines of seeing the Bible as historical myth in the first 12 chapters of Genesis, or do you go all the way through most of Genesis? Do you consider the Exodus historical myth? Where do you line that up? Yeah, help me understand.
I mean, I don't think it's myth. I think it's just, you have to understand that the Hebrew authors looked at history in theological ways. They were trying to derive theological meaning from things. So they would look at something like a Tower of Babel incident, and they're like, okay, what theologically, how would we interpret this in our theological worldview? So they didn't necessarily, you could make the case they're not really making up history. They're looking at things in the past and going, well, okay, what was God trying to do through that would fit with our cultural expectations and whatnot? Whether it was wrong or whether it was, it's led by the Holy Spirit, that's a theological question separate. But that's kind of what they were doing. I don't look at Genesis 1 through 11 as mythology. I look at it like as sort of primal history. They're doing that kind of thing. They're looking at things, these oral traditions that have come down to them, and they're trying to understand them through their theological lenses. That necessarily isn't bad, especially if they're being guided by the Holy Spirit. But again, that'd be another question altogether.
Okay.
In terms of the Exodus, I'm about to do a 75-minute documentary on the Exodus and argue that it is historically reliable.
Nice. Awesome. That's good, because I know there are some things that we disagree with. I'm a young earth creationist. I tend to look at the ages of the people there as real ages, but those are side issues, and I listen to your side as well. But the thing that I was going to go with there, either way, how you see it or I see it, when we go back and look at the scriptures, we believe that Moses is getting a clear revelation of the past, right? So he's now going to codify their oral traditions, because you believe, like with me, the author is Moses, right?
Some of it. I mean, I would say that it's probably a collection of the elders also helping Moses.
Yeah,
I don't think Moses wrote about his death, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. So I love how you and we got to keep clarifying. So I don't want to speak for you, but I do want to get to a point of agreement to say this. Okay, so Moses primarily with the elders during the time of the Exodus are writing the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Now, here's what I say to my friends from the pagan witchcraft community. It's very simple. Whatever would have predated that, Hammurabi's code, now they're going to compare it to the law of Moses, circumcision, etc. We are saying as Christians that our God created and sustained and brought forth the universe, was working with the people during these ancient times, and now codifies his belief. So I even gave them an example that would say, even today, this doesn't give room for the Mormon belief or the Islamic belief, but I'm just saying God could today give us a revelation that would be perfectly accurate to the creation of the world. Just because it came after all of these other things in time doesn't mean that it would be dependent upon all of those things. That's how I would describe it, because somebody might say, before Moses, though, is this, and written down in Hindi is this, and some of this might come before, Judaism. How do you look at it? That's how I would phrase it, that the truth may have been written down later, but it was preserved through those traditions, and it doesn't matter because it's true. Whatever is true for all times, whether we get it at a different time. What would you say about that, my brother?
I mean, let's think of just some of the things that are in the Torah. Things like do not kill. Okay, well, that's also in the Code of Hammurabi. Was that like, I mean, were humans before God said that running around killing each other thinking it was normal? I mean, some of it's common sense, or it's just things that we know we should do. And God is just sort of stating this as part of his suzerain treaty he has with the Hebrews. I mean, it doesn't have to, just because there are some things that were good in the Code of Hammurabi, some good wisdom literature there, that doesn't mean that the Jews cannot use that as well within their suzerain treaty with Yahweh. I don't see why they have to be like, aha, you just clearly copied all this. Oh, if there is good wisdom in other places, why can't the Jews use it? Like Paul does in Acts 17. He found good wisdom in Epimenides, and he wanted to incorporate it into, or Luke wanted to incorporate it into Acts. Isn't that a good thing? I mean, we recognize the early church fathers said that, to the Greeks, God gave them philosophy, and we should seize that wisdom because all wisdom is good wherever we find it. The early Jewish authors could have been doing the exact same thing, looking for wisdom in other cultures that would have been incorporated with it. I mean, I'm sure they were treating it more like wisdom literature, like meat and bones. There's some good things, there's some bad things. We know what's just the good stuff. We're going to incorporate and use it. That's not a problem. I don't see why that has to be a problem because it's the biblical text.
Yeah, exactly. And just to hit on that, I see it like, well, they're going to speak a language. Let's say whatever Adam and Eve are speaking, that's a language, and that's going to have a connotation to it, a meaning behind words. And eventually the Hebrew language is going to come out of that. And maybe there's these other Semitic languages. And yes, there's going to be similarities. And so just following back language, because a lot of times people get caught up on etymology of words, like did Yahweh predate the Bible? These are the things they kind of bring up to me. But once again, I would simply say, if God is expressing himself through these languages and cultures before he gives the law to Moses, our first books, what does that change? That changes nothing. All it's saying is in our book, in the revelation we are receiving, God now says once and for all, this is my name. This is who I'll be known as. But just to hit on that one issue just for a minute, do you believe that Yahweh predated the Abrahamic faith of Judaism? Because sometimes people try to say that name could have been used in other religions as well. So it wasn't even a unique name to the Jewish God.
Okay, there's no evidence of that. Okay, so I did a whole study on this last year. There's a great book called In Search of God by Trygve Mettinger on this as well. It's based on the idea that Yahweh sort of predated the Jewish religion is really based on a lot of speculation based on the etymology of the word Yahweh. And scholars like Mark Smith will even say, I'm just sort of guessing here, but it might mean this. I mean, there's no evidence beyond that. Mettinger notes the most likely explanation is in Exodus 3. It refers to his timeless nature. Yahweh is sort of the way to say you are in Hebrew. You can't say I am in Hebrew because you'll be uttering the divine name. So you have to refer to God as you are. And that's kind of what Yahweh is intended to get at. That's probably the most likely explanation. Why? Well, we have a text that says it is Exodus 3. I mean, why do we have to make up other weird theories when there's no evidence for it, when we already have a text that tells us where the name came from? The only indication of Yahweh being worshipped outside of the Jewish religion is there's an Egyptian inscription that dates to the end of just after the 1400s under a pharaoh called Amenhotep III. And he speaks about in the deserts, there are these Shashu of Yahweh. And they go, aha, see the Shashu were worshiping him before the Hebrews. Okay, but what does Shashu mean? Shashu just means nomads. Well, weren't the Jews nomads before they were in Canaan? Yeah, they were there for about 40 years. So they're just saying they're nomads of Yahweh out there. Well, they could have been the same people. I mean, like, I don't understand where that argument comes from. Beyond that, there's no real evidence of anyone worshiping Yahweh besides the Jews. They'll try to make the connection to the god El. Now, El is a Canaanite god. He's worshipped at Ugarit as well as in other places. But he's sort of like the head deity. He's like, the head deity creates all the other gods. And you could argue it just was a perversion of the original religion that happened over time. It doesn't. And so what the Jews do, they just sort of say, this high creator God you speak of called El, yeah, that's Yahweh. He revealed himself to us. This is the way he really wants to be worshipped. You're not worshiping El correctly. We're worshiping him as El Yahweh correctly, kind of thing. So I did a whole series on my channel, 3-part videos. The first one is polytheism in the Bible. The second one is Israel's revolutionary monotheism, which points out the Jewish scriptures could not have evolved from paganism or polytheism. And the third one is the case for ancient monotheism. So there's a lot of evidence that actually argues against that idea.
Oh, that is so awesome. I got it up right here. What playlist is that under if people want to look at it? Which one?
I believe it's the ancient monotheism or polytheism one. I don't know. I'd have to look really quickly here because it's just 3 videos I did at the beginning of 2019. Oh no, sorry, it'd be 2020. I was researching it all in 2019, and it took me a while. I went through the playlist is biblical and ancient monotheism on my channel, and there's just 3 videos in there. But yeah, I went through a lot of different stages of those videos, re-editing, reworking, finding new research to put in. I think the first video went through 12 or 13 drafts.
Wow. Yeah, just to take a pause here, man, it's something that they're not here today. Michael, I certainly appreciate your time. If they're willing to set up a debate of some kind, if they can get somebody, can I be a middleman to try to arrange that with you? And then maybe we could do it on your channel somewhere, or I'll do it here, but obviously your channel has more reach.
I don't really do debates on my channel. I just do the video library. I do debates on other channels to help grow and get bigger. So I prefer to do something like that. If I'm going to do a debate, I need to wait until after this semester because I'm going to get bogged down with schoolwork over the next couple months.
Okay, so I would just say, guys, if they didn't show up for this, at least know we as Christians took our time out. We have answered as many as I've been hearing through the comments and chats. It seems like they hosted us because there was a lot of people on our page continually telling these large groups of Wiccans and witches and so forth, get off this page, stop feeding them attention. They use almost like the example of, I think if Tinkerbell didn't get attention, Tinkerbell would die or something. Okay, but here we go. Oh, yes, Keith, he's back. One of our guys is here. Okay, awesome, Keith. I have literally set this up for folks like yourself. Okay, look at this man. This man looks like a Norse man, right? This is, I think, and I don't want to speak for him, Keith, let me know if you would consider yourself to be a Norseman or a Viking. I forget how you guys term it, but I remember you, and I thought that was what you believed. Okay, here we go. I have a long-winded question. I've been watching, but I would prefer to wait until there's more people on. Okay, so I guess he's kind of waiting to see if we get that same attention that we've had before. But Keith, maybe when you come on, maybe others will come on. So I'm going to share the feed now. Whoever wants to come on. Michael, are you ready to take some guests if they do want to come on?
Yeah, I can answer some questions. I just don't want to get into long-winded, a debate over the issue. So sure, I mean, I could, but let's just remember they're questions. If I respond, it's likely they're going to want to respond, and then we can go back and forth for 20 minutes. And let's try not to do that because I'm sure there are other people that want questions as well, if anything.
Okay, cool. So what Michael is saying is he doesn't want to get stuck into the trap that I've been on for hours and hours and hours, feeling like I'm going to answer everybody's question. But I actually have set aside time to do that, guys. So Michael gave us just a little bit of his time. So if you want to bring your best, this would be the time. Bring up your best point. Feel free to come on, and then we'll answer it as best. He'll answer it as best as he can. Okay. He says here, I'll just sum it up in a message. I've already written it out. Okay, so he's going to go copy and paste that. Okay, John is here. Go ahead, Mike. What were we going to say, Michael?
Oh no, I was just looking at the question. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to read it. I don't know if you want to read these as well, but. Do you want to read them, John? Michael, I don't mind you reading them. I'm just trying to be a good
No, I
host.
hate reading stuff about me. I feel I love getting compliments, but I never know how to get them. I'm always just kind of like, what do I do now? Thank you.
Yeah. You're a humble guy, man.
Thank
Okay.
you. I guess
Yeah.
I just am
Handsome.
very awkward. I don't know what to do at that point. I appreciate it, but I just feel weird. I don't know.
Yeah. I was going to say you're actually the most handsome out of all the well-known apologists, Sam and
Oh, well,
David
obviously.
Wood.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You see this?
Yeah, look at that.
I should get some long flowing hair and then I get a fan here and then I would really shine.
Oh, that would be funny.
The only problem is my hair grows like this and then it just keeps going out and up and it just never comes out.
Look at that. Got to get you some hair straightener. Okay. John is saying here, I think that whatever you are doing here is very important to the entire humankind by representing Christianity. IP videos have been very helpful, really helpful for me personally and for a lot of people I know here in Egypt.
Good. Glad I could help. But yeah, glad I could be helpful in that. My Exodus documentary will be coming out soon. It's going to be 75 minutes because I have a lot of data to go over. I won't even have time to cover the wandering period or anything that happened at Sinai or after because there's just so much data to go over.
Man, that's so cool, bro. Yeah, you've helped so many folks. Helped myself as a pastor as well, playing those videos. Okay, here it is. We're going to take our time with Keith and try to answer this as best as we can. Looks like it's multi-parts. Okay, empirical evidence is me seeing many white swans throughout my entire life, then saying all swans are white. Mm-hmm. This is based on a probability, but cannot guarantee certainty. So he understands the problem of induction, which you have dealt with as well. So he's going to hit right where you're at, Michael. You love these kinds of questions. There could also be black swans. This is not the same as a rational proof like 2 + 2 = 4. This truth cannot be changed and is a fact. This truth cannot be changed and is a fact. I guess the mathematical cannot be changed. If the God of the Bible exists and he is all powerful, can he create a stone? I thought we were going to go deep, but now we're right here. It's okay, Keith. I appreciate you, but we're going to read it. Can he create a stone that he cannot lift? If he cannot, let me just back up because I'm kind of laughing. Like I was just taking my time. I'm like, here he comes, Michael, the guy who spent so much time on the metaphysics.
Okay, it's the omnipotence question. Can God create a stone so even he can't lift? This is based on a fallacious type of reasoning and how you're defining omnipotence. Omnipotence means all powerful. It doesn't mean all abilities. So we need to be careful with there. God can't get sick. God cannot lie. Okay, he doesn't have those abilities. Does that mean he's not powerful? No, because power is defined as in terms of that kind of essence. So basically omnipotence means God could overpower every being in existence. Even if they all ganged up on him, he would still be able to overpower them because he has all power, not all abilities. In terms of the logical issue, can God create a stone so heavy even he can't lift is also, it's illogical. It doesn't exist in reality. This philosopher Richard Swinburne says, something that's logically absurd purports to describe an action, but doesn't really. It's just a collection of words that pretends to describe something in reality, but it doesn't. Because it's illogical, it's completely meaningless. It's like saying, could I toad an 11 or could I goat a squirrel? I just put together a bunch of words together there, pretending that it purports to describe a sentence, but it doesn't. It just is a collection of words. Saying, can God create a stone so even he can't lift is similar to that. Can the most powerful being in existence create something that would be out of his power? No, it's illogical. And again, it doesn't mean God can violate logic because logic is just a description of everything that exists and everything that is possible. That's all it really is. If something is outside of logic, it just doesn't exist. It's entirely meaningless. So God doesn't violate logic because logic is not a boundary God is stuck in. It's just a description of things and everything that is possible. And we have to remember omnipotence just means powerful. It doesn't mean all abilities. This is good. This is a long tradition going back to Moses Maimonides, St. Augustine, who have pointed this out centuries ago. I mean, they were basically pointing out, yeah, God can't do everything. God can't get sick or whatnot. I even think I did a video on this about 2 years ago. It's called Omnipotence Paradox Debunked. It's on my channel. But in there, I give all these quotes. I give all the definitions. To quote one from there, St. Augustine said, "It is precisely because he is omnipotent that for him some things are impossible." So early church fathers defined omnipotence as I'm defining it here. They're fully admitting that he doesn't mean all abilities.
So good. Yeah, what I would say, tell me how you would say it in a simple way to the mathematical equation. I would say 2 + 2 = 5 is wrong for the same reasons that God cannot create a rock that He can or cannot lift, etc. Because
Exactly.
you're putting words together like numbers as integers in the wrong place, right?
Hmm.
Like they're just being misplaced. Yeah. That's a good quote from Richard Swinburne and Augustine. And that's the thing, friends, we don't mean to get all philosophical on you, but when you ask philosophical questions, that's where it's going to go. Because a lot of times I see people coming on here going, well, don't use philosophy, and that's the philosophy of don't using philosophy. You don't see the circular reasoning in this. And the problem is that many Christians, supposed Christians who left Christianity, become witches. Michael, tell me if you can maybe speak to this or relate to this in your chats, because I know your videos get so many plays. They always say, like, I used to be a Christian, I used to do this. But then when we go deep with them, they don't really understand Christianity on that level. I remember C.S. Lewis saying something like, the adult who's rejecting Christianity for these kind of immature reasons, not trying to put down Keith, but these lesser understandings of philosophies and thinking, are actually rejecting a caricature or a child's version of something, not the actual version. I know I probably butchered the quote, but how would you say it? Because, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I mean, I think there's a lot of Christians that don't study this stuff either, and they give Christianity a bad name, and it makes it look stupid, and then people have a reason to leave it. I mean, if the church really got into apologetics and was teaching proper theology, proper biblical hermeneutics, I feel like we'd be in a much better position. So I don't really entirely blame non-Christians for this. I mean, given the background of a lot of churches, it's really quite unfortunate. But I also don't think it's entirely the church's fault. I mean, everyone's going to be responsible for their own decisions they make. And get in the book, study this stuff. I put up videos to refer people to research more on this. I don't think people should stop if they watch my videos. Keep researching beyond that. But yeah, there's a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of very bad objections out there that people use to just dismiss Christianity. And just simply studying a lot of the scholarship on it would utterly debunk that quite easily. Things like this that come from Zeitgeist. I should never hear another objection that comes from Zeitgeist movie ever again. I'm still going to get them because I know people are still going to use it because they think they don't study beyond it. They don't fact check those types of things. And we got to stop doing that. We got to fact check our own side as well as the other side.
Yeah, because guys, going back to this question of the question of God's omnipotence, it also goes to his omnibenevolence. If God is good, why does he allow evil? Michael has other videos on that as well. And what you're doing, Keith, and others like you, is you're employing a certain kind of philosophy to get to a point or a way of thinking. Philosophy just means the love of wisdom, right? So you're employing this to make a point. But I come back to foundations, and I'd like to ask Michael about this. So I'm a presuppositionalist, not the annoying kind, but as a foundationalist, as an axiomatic person. How do you engage with people who have no foundation but want to throw stones? I say like this: they want to build a house while jumping out of a plane. Borrowing from God, as Frank Turek says. So I know you're friends with him as well. How do you encourage people to think through their grounding as they're asking those questions? Because I would even say to Keith, why are you even trying to make a contradiction? You're borrowing from the law of non-contradiction to say something. Here Jesus or God is contradicting himself. But in your worldview, where is that even grounded? What is the meaning behind non-contradiction in your worldview? How do you say, Michael, and what would you classify yourself as? An evidentialist, presuppositionalist? I'm sure many would like to know as well.
I call myself a classical apologist.
Yeah, and then so how would you say reasoning is grounded? Like, is reasoning grounded in God, and then it comes forth from the Imago Dei, something like that, and we all have a sensus senitas divinitas, whatever, sense of the divine, or do we all start neutral and we have to learn certain things? Like where do you come at it? Because I come from Romans 1 that everybody has a sense, and then they suppress it.
It's a very complicated issue that would require a book, I feel like, because we're going to talk about a lot of different things in there. The epistemic question about reasoning, what is reasoning? So there's a psychological aspect, there's an epistemic aspect, and then the presuppositionalist is getting more to the ontological aspect of all that. So that would be an issue I'd probably disagree with precepts on. And specifically, I used it in a video I did a while back. Is God the same as goodness? Because it's actually a way I was pointing out that objective prescriptions need to be grounded in a mind, unlike objective descriptions, which is just sort of grounded in the actual affairs of the state. So I feel like that's a whole can of worms. I don't know if we should really open up. That'd be an entire book I would have to write on that.
Sure, sure. But you understand my point of view to a guy like Keith. It's almost like, Keith, why are you asking that question? It gets him to back it up into a point where his worldview has to account for those kinds of questions. Whereas we as Christians are comfortable with philosophy. And maybe before I get to a few more quotes here, just some, comments, just more about you personally. What drew you to philosophy? What about it as a Christian goes hand in hand? Because sometimes people think like we as Christians, we're just believing the Bible. What made you see this connection between philosophy and the Christian faith?
Well, a lot of early church fathers did. St. Augustine, Philo of Alexandria, who was a Jew, argued that this kind of stuff, that we should seize the wisdom of the Greeks because it's very consistent with a lot of ideas in Christianity. If, for example, think of what John says in John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word. Well, honestly, that's a bad translation because he's talking about the logos, which is a Greek term. And logos doesn't mean word. Logos really means like a divine principle or a cosmological guiding force for the entire universe, or the reason something is there. Really what he's saying is in the beginning was the reason for life, and the reason for life was God. This kind of idea. So he's taking that kind of idea and he's putting it in his Jewish background and giving it a whole new understanding of it. Now, Christian thinkers later came and they'd read thinkers like Heraclitus, who wrote on the Logos in their Greek world, and they would then use that to better understand the scriptures and the Jewish way that John sort of uses it. And I think that's perfectly wonderful to do. Aristotle was very influenced for Aquinas. Plato is very influential for St. Augustine. These guys had a lot of truth in them that I think we should use and borrow and use. And philosophy, once again, is just literally love of wisdom. It's the basis of all knowledge. You have to do philosophy. Everyone does philosophy. You can't begin to think or question something without doing philosophy, because that's what philosophy technically is. So everyone does philosophy. So we should just get a better understanding of what the ancients taught, the people, the giants that we are standing on, because we're on their shoulders in that kind of sense. And we should just get a better understanding of wisdom in general. And once we do, we can better understand our own worldviews and ourselves.
So good. Yeah, I was listening to a presuppositional he teaches for Westminster Theological Seminary. I'll get out his book for people to listen to, and he's very well balanced and well read into Western philosophy, and he's also a presuppositionalist. And he was going through the philosophies of the Greeks and how it came to Christianity, and it almost reminded me of the scientific revolution. That if it wasn't for the Christians in the philosophical movement, we wouldn't have gotten beyond a lot of those kind of circular problems they found themselves in. It was the Christians who said, yeah, I see a lot of what Aristotle is saying is true, like Plato, the world of the forms, etc. There's things there, but there's a need for something beyond this to explain it, and then we can go forward with better explanations. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it also I think ties into, the scientific revolution. Yeah, like people were doing science before Christians, but it was really how they tied it together. Well, yeah, go ahead, talk on that.
Really, they were doing what you would call proto-science. They weren't really going out doing experiments in that kind of sense. They were doing more of natural philosophy. So Aristotle made numerous mistakes that he could have just corrected if he would have looked, like the number of teeth, inside the man and the woman's jaw. He just made simple errors along the way. So he wasn't really doing science. They were doing more proto-science. They were thinking about the natural world in philosophical ways. Science sort of came about through Christianity, specifically the Czech Catholic Church, funding a lot of these inquiries into the natural world. And if you eventually start getting science, the idea of experimentation and repeating and going off of that, Galileo, for example, is one of, I wouldn't say he's the first, but you start to see it really start to flourish there and really expand out beyond that. But yeah, it's hard to really say. I don't want to say science is a Christian invention. I will say Christianity was crucial for science to sort of come about in the way it is, it's sort of in the modern sense. But I mean, it really came about from a long European tradition, building on, of course, principles in Christianity, which were crucial, but also principles in Greek natural philosophy, which were also crucial. This is why people say that Athens and Jerusalem are the pillars of the modern world. And that's really the truth of it. I would say Jerusalem is probably a slightly bigger pillar based on what we know from the past. But yeah, I would definitely say that you definitely get the idea of science coming out from Christian Europe, from the Christian Mediterranean world over a long period of time, of them slowly working these sort of things out, building on proto-science ideas in Greek philosophy, which was more natural philosophy.
Yeah, thank you. And John Frame is the person I was talking about, philosopher and professor. And on iTunes, I just sent his class there, and we got some questions for you along those same lines. What is your favorite book concerning apologetics?
Oh man, I don't know. So many. Maybe the Blackwell's Companion to Natural Theology. That's a good starting place to get some ideas for the arguments for God's existence. I got a lot. I don't know. It's hard for me to really nail down one. Depends on the subject. If we're talking about resurrection, are we talking about New Testament reliability? Are we talking about Old Testament? Are we talking about arguments for God's existence? It depends on the topic.
That's good. Here's another shout out to you from Daniel. Whether he realizes it or not, or intends it, Michael Jones is a part of a theological renaissance that is much needed in the world today. I don't know that it will lead to denominations, and I hope not, but it's definitely going to lead to a very different way that people read the Bible from now on.
I hope so. I really want people to read the Bible in a better, more intellectual way.
Awesome. Here, Lovert said, I got my BA from SUM. What's up, my brother? I see you're going to be speaking at SUM conference this year. Bless you, man. Appreciate you. You're probably following Michael. I didn't know if you were following us, but however you got here, Lovert, appreciate you. Oh, man, some goodies here. Yeah, John just kind of hitting on what you're saying, that the Logos is the source of logic. And we would actually say that just like how Jesus is truth, Jesus is the way, Jesus embodies as attributes these things, right, Michael? How would you distinguish between Jesus saying the truth, Jesus being logical, and Jesus being what the very source of those things are, like the truth, the life? How do you look at it? Because I know you're a panentheist, right? A panentheist. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think we need to distinguish, really. I mean, because I would say that simply that we have to understand that the nature of Christianity is that we are relational beings created for relationships. And though our Logos is to be united with God in multiple ways. So that is our Logos. It is God. It has always been God. So I don't, as long as we understand what we mean by Logos, I mean, so he says, I understand Logos as a source of all logic in the sense that when humans use logic, they interact in an indirect way with Jesus. Yeah, but I would say Jesus really is the Logos for humanity. It is the cosmic principle that, or the cosmic reason for our existence.
Right on. Here he writes back after that question, I guess I need a whole bookshelf.
Yeah, I've had to stop buying books. I now get online books, like ebooks, because I was running out of space. I just am out of space. As you can see, I'm piling the books up there because they just don't fit on the shelf anymore.
Yeah, I know. It's not right that I have two bigger bookshelves than you. I need to raise some support for you here. But yes, it is digital.
I need a bigger house. I don't have space. I need a bigger house.
Yeah. You definitely are the one to go to for research. Benjamin says, do you guys think the resurrection can be proven? Go ahead, Michael, take that on.
Now, proven in a historical sense is hard to do. We don't prove things in history. We show it's the most likely explanation based on the data. So I would say we can show the resurrection is the most likely explanation. It's the least ad hoc and the most plausible. I think it's far more plausible than naturalistic hypothesis once we throw out naturalist presuppositions. This idea that, anything that beyond the natural is going to be the least probable. If you start with that assumption, of course, you're going to arrive at a naturalistic explanation, and you're not going to be fair with the data. So I encourage people to look at it from a total agnostic standpoint and see which explanation is going to be the least ad hoc and the most plausible.
Awesome. And if you want to see Aaron Ra and Dillahunty, what's Dillahunty's first name?
Matt Dillahunty.
Matt Dillahunty. If you want to see Aaron Ra and Matt Dillahunty humbled in a debate, listen to Michael's debates with these guys. They were not ready because they're more used to debating guys like me that are more aggressive and try to get more on tangents that, I just feel like sometimes we don't know where they're at as well as we should. But Michael came in there zoned in exactly where they were at. So he left them no room. Brother, maybe just talk about that just for a second. Which one of those two debates was your favorite in accomplishing something for the body of Christ, not as a win for just your own ego? And I know some of them, I think Aaron Ross was frustrating for you, but maybe you can speak to that. But which one do you think was the best for the body of Christ to go, yes, we finally have made our point?
Are you talking about my debate with Matt on God's existence?
Yeah, and then the other one with Aaron Ra was which shows,
because I debated Matt Dillahunty twice. I debated him first on if religion is beneficial or harmful, and it went like as you would expect, the same way it went with Aaron Ra, where he just didn't have any comebacks. But I think the debate I had with Matt Dillahunty on God's existence was more important, and Braxton Hunter did commentary on it, and he basically agreed something I saw in the debate, that Matt basically gave me all my premises and just admitted that, well, I don't want God to exist because it creates baggage for people. Or he didn't say it like that. I'm sort of paraphrasing what I kind of got from it. But he said, like, this mind behind the universe you're arguing for. I mean, do you really want to call that God? Think about the baggage it's going to create. Okay, you're basically arguing, you're appealing to consequences, and you're giving me all my data. You're giving me all my premises. You're basically admitting that I'm right. You just don't like the conclusion. And I'm sorry if he may not like the way I'm interpreting that, but that's really how it came across, and it came across that way to a lot of other people.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. I didn't know there was two with him. I must have confused them.
There was supposed to be a third one, but he pulled out of it because he didn't like the host anymore.
Yeah, I like when you said to him, I don't care what it feels to you or how you think about it. It's true whether you like it or not. Because, he literally reduced the debate down to, well, I just don't know if I can see it that way. Or, like a personal opinion,
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll follow the data. You go in your emotions.
I know that so turned it on him. And then with Aaron Ra, and then Eric Hernandez's question, your debate with him, I think he doesn't want to see you guys much more after that,
Oh, I've turned him into a meme. I occasionally use. I have an image of him on my computer of him like this saying "Bring it," and I throw it up on like whenever I need it as a meme. So he's become a meme because of that.
Exactly. And you brought it and he left it on the table, right? Like you brought like this much of research and he didn't even take it with him. Yeah.
I know. I love it. And he did a couple of videos after, and he said one of the craziest things I've ever heard. He said, the truth is intrinsic religiosity was created by researchers who saw some correlations between religion and bad and harmful effects. And so they needed a scapegoat. Again, paraphrasing what he said, I'm like, you literally just asserted a conspiracy theory that a bunch of scientists got together and created the concept of intrinsic religiosity out of a conspiracy to protect religion. Like, are you that crazy? Like, what?
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. You mentioned Braxton. Shout out to him, man. I love his channel too. He's so good, man. Okay. Andre asks a question here. I've had someone tell me that he hangs around good witches and they use names of saints to heal, for example, and don't need to use the name of Jesus. So it's all the same according to him. How do you address that, Michael?
Well, that's just silly. Saints, I mean, saints are not like magical charms you can call upon whenever you need them. I mean, if they can still hear us, and I would say they still exist, I mean, they don't have to listen to you. I mean, and they don't necessarily have the ability to heal. We don't know these kind of things. I would strongly move away from that, because what you're doing in that sense is you're putting yourself as like the controller of the whole situation. I can call upon the saints to heal and they'll do my bidding. It's like the same way when I see like prosperity preachers think they can call upon God to make them healthy and wealthy. It's just as bad and harmful. You're turning yourself into God and turning the God you should be worshiping into your servant. Likewise, these saints we should revere and respect, not expect them to do our bidding.
Yeah. And I would just say from a practical pastoral point of view, that's a good apologetic answer. And then as a pastoral point of view, that good and evil is defined by God. So even though they're calling themselves a good witch, it's still evil according to the word. And religions that incorporate paganism into themselves are not the Christian faith. And so it could be good, like they feed the poor, help the homeless, wish good things upon people. But remember, eating an apple or eating from the fruit of the garden was evil and got us kicked out of the garden. So good and evil is not just a societal decision. It's based on God. and I would tell them to repent, right, Michael? Repent of those things and come to Christ. But yeah, that was a great answer. Okay, back to Austin. He just wants a summary question. He's saying, can you just maybe give me your favorite apologist, if that makes it easier? You and Frank are my favorite too, Frank Turek there.
Oh, me. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
Probably C.S. Lewis. I mean, I really enjoy reading him. He's been very influential in shaping of my beliefs and worldview. So yeah, probably C.S. Lewis still. I mean, it's going to be hard to. How can you compete with him?
Wow, I'm actually, man, I'm impressed with that. I thought you were going to say like some obscure guy. Like, okay, like you're deep, but you're not so deep you've moved beyond C.S. Lewis. I think, like, yeah, man, I think he's definitely probably my favorite.
It's like trying to say it's like you can't get a puffed up head. I mean, I love these. Like sometimes I'll meet philosophers who say like, you really think Plato's that great? You should really read Thales or this other guy like Zeno. Yeah, I'm sure they're great, but let's not forget, that Plato is Plato for a reason. I mean, he's that influential for a reason. I mean, so we got to remember. So for me, in terms of Christianity, I feel like C.S. Lewis is just a titan you just can't get past. He's not going to be. Right. He's not just for the layman. He's for the intellectual as well.
Exactly. It's like, what's the best rock band? And if you can't say the Beatles or someone like that, you have to say some obscure band. You're not giving credit to where credit's due, right? You got to at least give some credit there.
Right.
Okay. Daniel asking another question. Does Michael get flack from his wife for buying so many books?
Yes.
Okay. If you
that's
can't
why I buy
answer
ebooks
that,
now.
Okay. Yeah. If you can't answer that, how would you either of you deal with someone who claims to be Catholic? So this is a Catholic question, but keeps dabbling in the occult because they have no problem holding multiple contradictions in their mind at once.
Okay, well then they can't do that. They have to deal with that. You have to have a consistent worldview. I mean, like it's just wrong. You got to tell them it's wrong. You got to point out you're believing things that are contradicting the scriptures. Who are you beholden to? And you got to really ask them, get to the heart of the issue. Ask them what is Catholicism to them? What is Christianity to them? Are they using it as like fire insurance? Like, are they trying to use it to sort of get to heaven? And then they want to do these other side things because it's beneficial for them. Okay, you're trying to make yourself God and then make all these other religious ideas your sort of magical tools you can use. You can't do that. Christianity is very clear. You have to put Jesus as Lord, not as your spokesperson or as your servant. So when people are doing that kind of things, I feel like they're really falling into that mindset where they want to make Jesus their servant, and then they can do all these other things because they're the real boss of the whole situation.
Awesome. Yeah, Austin brings out Matt's quote, "I'm not convinced." Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was his quote. This gentleman wrote back, he said he follows you. That's cool. He's part of our alumni for this Bible college that we are a part of. And he also follows Cam. I'm sure you're friends with him with Capturing Christianity, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Okay. Yeah. Daniel brings up this point. What about the woman at Endor? How do you see that? I did a whole study on this on my book, Real Saints Don't Pray to Saints. By the way, these are all free online for Michael's fans, npichurch.org. I'll put a link, download them for free, put them on your e-reader, and we'll bless you guys with them. That's what we do for the body of Christ. I did my research on this, but I'm really curious to what Michael says. Michael, was this the real spirit of Samuel and God was allowing it, or was this a spirit pretending to be Samuel? What do you say, man?
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't know if the text really tells us. It could have been a demonic spirit, an Elohim imitating Samuel. But Samuel also scolds him like, this is a bad thing. Why would you even do this? Like, don't do this. This is stupid. So it's all very much a polemic against that kind of necromancy. Like, don't do these kinds of things. They're bad. And remember, Saul's not even a good guy anyway. I mean, we shouldn't really be following after him. But I mean, I don't really know or care in that kind of sense. I don't know. It's one of those issues, sort of like, does it really matter? Like,
yeah, because we still have the injunction not to do it, and so we're supposed to, as the reader, understand this was wrong. So we're not supposed to say, well, Samuel did it, therefore, Saul did it, therefore we can do it. We're supposed to look at that in the same way we'd look at David having an affair. It's said in the narrative, but it's not something we repeat. The research that I did, and I have it in my footnotes here, it doesn't have, you don't have much to work on, But the most that we can probably say is that the language used as "you will come to me" seems to be the wicked spirit beckoning his spirit to come. There's some language that the research that I did plays on that it's returning. Like how they would say, "I'm returning to my fathers," and this spirit is basically talking about Saul coming to him, and we don't believe Saul was righteous at that time, so we think that spirit was using that kind of language to kind of bring him to that dark underworld. Mm-hmm. But you're so right, we don't have a lot to go on there, and it's not to be an excuse, right, to do it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's like David had an affair, so I can do it. Yeah, here we go. Michael, I will be debating atheists who reject the scripture as evidence. Do you have a video that addresses this?
Not one in particular. I just simply point out that they're assuming the conclusion they want, that it's mythological, therefore it can't be evidence. It is a witness to events and people that existed. Now, you may think that it's mythological, but you can't assume that. You actually have to show evidence that it is. Otherwise, it could be an historical record of things that happened. So people will often judge the Bible guilty until proven innocent. Unless we have an attestation to the Tower of Babel incident, it didn't happen. No, we should be neutral on these types of things and just follow the evidence where it leads. You just can't assume the Bible is always guilty until proven innocent. So try to look at it from that perspective. Understand maybe it could be mythological if the evidence shows it, but also be open to the idea it could be an historical account. Don't just dismiss the Exodus because it's the Exodus. It could very well have been an historical account of early Hebrews leaving Egypt and then settling in Canaan.
Sorry about that. I was getting the reference here from the scholar. I actually have it in my footnotes. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I actually have it in my footnotes. It's J.R. Greenville, Call Up Samuel, the Andrews University Seminary Studies. He does some research on this, but I just wanted to share it for everybody. Yeah, and going back to what Michael's saying here, what do we do when someone says, "I don't accept the Bible as an evidence"? Well, what are we discussing then? Are we just discussing whatever you now want to put on the table as your evidence and not discussing my evidence? Then why do you have a Christian here? Are they just discussing, did someone named Moses live? Don't use the Bible, go. Okay, well, the only reason why we know of a person named Moses is from our Bible. So, Michael, help me understand just what would you call that as a fallacy for someone to say in a debate, don't debate the very thing that is at stake here? Is that assuming the consequent? Like, we're already assuming this is not good evidence. So then we're now going to debate whether or not it is evidence. Yeah, help me understand that.
You're assuming the conclusion you want. You'd be kind of just begging the question, it feels like. Even non-Christian scholars don't do that. They don't look at the Bible as not evidence of anything. If you especially study New Testament scholars, they'll believe, Paul actually thought this. He was a real historical person. He wrote this. He really did believe this about Jesus. They don't just say, well, everything Paul says is guilty until we find it innocent. No, they understand it's an historical source. It's containing early beliefs and early traditions, and we have to treat it like that. It is an historical source. Now they think there are things that are wrong about it, but they don't just dismiss the Bible because it's the Bible. They dismiss it because they have other reasons to argue that, and then we challenge them on that. So you can note that's a fallacious argument just to declare the Bible as mythological or guilty until it's proven innocent.
Yeah, and just to hit on this, you brought up something so good when you were talking with Dillahunty, and I can't remember which debate it was now, but when you were using when you used the argument from the mind, and you brought, was that the evidence for God? And you used the one of your, it was like a long argument. It had like 14 points to it. It was from the conscience.
Cosmic conscience.
Cosmic conscious. This is where you even corrected me in our email, and I always get confused. Conscious or consciousness? What am I supposed to say there?
Conscious is like the OU. It's consciousness is like, it's yourself, your awareness, you who you kind of are, and your conscious is like that voice in the back of your head it's spelled like CON, science. It's that voice in the back of your head that tells you to do what's right.
Got it. So the argument from consciousness, cosmic consciousness, kind of didn't rely upon the Bible really in any way, and you gave it all to him, and he really just had no answer to it. So in one sense, when you give them what they want, when you say, here's something you can look at without a bias towards our scriptures for an evidence towards God, they just want to zippity-doo-dah right by it and then say, well, that's too vague. That doesn't give us enough detail. Can you just share that real quick? Because you've done so much work on the consciousness. Where do you, how, like in certainty and percentages towards certainty, how far do you think that argument should bring the open-minded person? Because for me, I believe would be like 99.99% certain after understanding what's going on in the mind with what we can observe.
Yeah, they don't really understand a lot of the issues because in philosophy of mind and neuroscience, there's no evidence the brain can create consciousness. This comes from the actual experts in the field. There's just nothing there. This is why it's called the hard problem. If you Google hard problem, you're going to get the hard problem of consciousness. You're not going to get the origin of the universe or biological questions like on the origin of species. You're going to get the hard problem of consciousness. It's such a hard problem. It literally has been called the hard problem. What it is was trying to explain how the brain could create consciousness. So now that's a starting point. But when you get further into it and you start to understand the nature of consciousness and how it is different from material reality, there's no way it could just simply come from the brain. The reason why the hard problem exists is because you're looking at the problem backwards. You're not going to ever get an explanation for there. And that's why as the research goes on, the problem gets harder and harder. Like it's not actually getting easier, despite the myth a lot of physicalists will claim. There's nothing in neuroscience that's actually making the hard problem easier. It's actually making things a little bit harder. So once you start to understand consciousness cannot come from matter, you start to understand your own nature, your own consciousness. It's basically irreducible in that kind of sense. It's fundamental. Your conscious experience cannot be divided into parts. So you could divide your memories up, but your basic self, the you, the I, the identity, cannot be divided into smaller parts. And so in a nutshell, I basically argue that it would have to come from a fundamental source that we would call God because it's coming from a consciousness. Now, again, that's a really rough summary. I would need to expand upon that. And so I talk about it in the debate and I talk about it in my videos as well. I have a video up on the cosmic conscious argument.
Yeah, guys, I'm sorry I'm nerding out with Michael here. I'm going to start going through you guys' questions real quick. Just to give a quick update to why we did this. Our ministry here in Chicago started interacting with some pagans and witches. It had a lot of feedback. They've ghosted us. They're not really here now. Before, I used to have hundreds of people on these lives or in the comments and on the lives, and they were asking all these questions. You can go back over the page, Stand Against Witchcraft, and all of those things. And I said, I'm going to bring on some experts. And, by the time we get them here, they've already moved on because they don't want to listen to us. But as you can see, we're calm, casual. They could have come. A few that are here, thank you for being here. But this just shows that our intentions were good with them. So, Michael, you're doing awesome. But, imagine, guys, if you were talking with Michael. So I'm kind of nerding out with him. Another quick thing, Michael, before I'm just going to knock out these questions. We do have him for another 40 minutes, guys. He gave us 2 hours. So please put those questions out there, and I will get to them. If I forget it, let me know. But one of the things that that one person said in a debate with you, I can't remember if it was Del Hunty or might have been with someone else. It might have been with Eric Hernandez. Someone said something along these lines. Well, I have a way around the hard problem. I don't accept there is a problem. It came from the brain. And it's like they just want to force their thought onto this subject. Like, I just fixed it, Like, it reminds me of a little kid, like, trying to fix the problem going on in the car or something the dad's working on and just bangs on it. There, I fixed it. Do you see with some of these internet atheists that they are literally that unaware of how hard the problem is that they think they're just going to do away with it with the swipe of a hand? It comes from your brain. I've solved it. Like, as if no one had thought about that. That's
like saying I fixed my engine because I turned off the check engine light. You just sort of missed the whole problem. The problem is it's not where you think it comes from. It's how the brain could create consciousness. We know you think it comes from the brain. How? Tell me how subjective experience can come from entirely things that are just not. Tell me how your subjective experience can come from things that are just not self-aware. Come from dead matter, dead weight. How is it that meaning sort of comes out of it? How is it that intention comes out of chemical reactions in the brain? These are entirely fundamentally different categories. Subjective experience, things like intentionality, awareness, perception, these are things not in the brain. You can't get them out of a math equation. You can't get them out of chemicals. They're entirely other. So they don't realize how hard of a problem this is. And they just assume it's just a function of the brain. It's just, it really just shows they're not thinking beyond this. And I really like it. A lot of it comes from Daniel Dennett, in my view, who is trying to just pretend there's no heart problem. And it's like, come on, man. You really think you can just dismiss it the way you're doing it? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, here's just to show off my little online collection here. I'm sure you have these books. History of Western Philosophy by Bertrand Russell. Do you have that one, or have at least read it or portions of it?
Yeah, I've read portions of it.
Yeah. So exactly, like he bites the bullet and says, there's no way around this consciousness problem unless we ground it with something. Otherwise, the man who says he's a poached egg is only wrong based on the government saying he's in the minority. And that's a quote right here, So yeah, he brings up the poached egg thing. I mean, this, guys, I just want to say this for those who are fans here of Michael and want to use this in the real world. We are doing that even now on this page, and we go out witnessing. These things really work if you let the spirit lead you. And Alex Rosenberg, Atheist Guide to Reality. Did you read that? Because I know you've quoted him before, but do you have his book on his viewpoints?
Which book did you say?
Alex Rosenberg. I thought I heard you quote him in one of your videos, The Atheist Guide to Reality. Let me put up the cover here.
I don't know if I've actually read his book. I may have read about it, but I don't know if I've quoted him.
I thought maybe you did. If not, so the bottom line is he writes a book called the Guide to Reality, and then he ends it. Here's the last. I'll give it to you guys. Spoiler alert! If you don't want me to, spoil it for you, pause for. Mute for a few seconds. But he ends his book, The Atheist Guide to Reality. And you got to understand, he's debated William M. Craig. He's, I think, a Yale professor and all of that. And this is how he ends it. The self, the person, the I inside the body is an illusion along with all the others. That means that even if there is a loophole in Epicurus's argument, which he talked about, that death is something you shouldn't worry about, science still backs him up that there isn't really any you or me or him or her to worry about death, post-death harm, boring, endless post-death existence or anything else. So the question is, who's writing the book, right? If it's not a you. And then he literally, this is how he ends the book, guys. Listen to how this atheist ends the book. This is one of the best philosophers out there. If you still can't sleep at night, after I just told you you're not a you, even after accepting science's answers, so who's accepting those, right? If not you, to the persistent questions, you probably just need one more thing besides Epicurean detachment. Take a Prozac or your favorite serotonin reuptake inhibitor and keep taking them till they kick in.
Wow.
Like, is that not hopeless, brother? What is going on? These worldviews have ramifications.
Well, it's like he doesn't think minds exist. So thank you for telling us your entire work is mindless.
Exactly.
This is the problem with a lot of these types of arguments is that this is something Josh Rasmussen hits on, is that let's start with what we know. Okay, I know I exist. I know I'm a mind. I know I'm experiencing things. That is my starting point. My starting point is not that I'm a collection of matter. I'm not a collection of particles. Your starting point is you, the I, and without that, you cannot actually study particles. You cannot actually study the thing beyond that. If you reach a conclusion that shows that you do not exist as a mind, if you as an I are not really there, it's an illusion, you made some error because you're the one who discovered that. It's in the sentence. You made a mistake. And this is why philosophy of mind is strongly in favor of more substance dualist or idealist positions because of these problems, namely the hard problem. And the materialist is basically just shot themselves or the physicalist has shot themselves in their foot because they're coming to conclusions that just simply do not make sense. You cannot say I do not exist. You started it with the word I. That doesn't make any sense. It's like saying, can God make a stone so big even he can't lift? It's logically incoherent and therefore should just be thrown out.
Yeah, you're just cracking me up here. Yeah, after all of my research, I've decided I don't exist. Yeah, it's just so silly.
It's like saying 2 + 2 = 5. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to stay out the way, guys. You're honoring our time. You're coming for Michael. I know that's why most of you are here. Thank you. And for the few that follow our channel, thank you guys for coming here. Okay. I'm just going to read them. He'll answer them. Have you read any books by Father Mathia, the humble, known in Arabic as Mata al-Maskin?
No, sorry, I have not.
Okay. All right. Maybe this has already been asked, but what are your views on the Orthodox and Catholic Church?
Other Christian churches, I don't get into denominational disputes.
Okay. Do you share your denomination or what kind of church you attend, or you keep that private? No.
That's private.
Yeah, I know for a long time, bro, you didn't even show your face for a while. You're kind of a private guy just in general, right?
Mm-hmm. I try to be, yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Okay, going back to that old thing. Here we go. All right, some goodies for you, my brother. What's your take on the book of Enoch as extra biblical text and using it to enhance your knowledge of Genesis 6, Nephilim, UFOs?
Okay, so yeah, that's a whole can of worms. I just did a video on the Book of Enoch in November where I pointed out it's not scripture, it's not a reliable document that goes back to a historical Enoch. It's basically heretical. It says in the Book of Enoch that Enoch is the Messiah. Okay, that's completely contradictory to the script, the New Testament. So I don't understand Christians trying to incorporate the Book of Enoch into the Bible. That's a horrible idea. I don't agree with its interpretation of the Nephilim. That's just something I get a lot of flack for because I don't think the Nephilim are really giants or half angels. I did a video again last year, Genesis 6a, the Nephilim. It's part of my Genesis series. And I made a case that they could just be polygamous, rebellious kings of the day. So that's another whole other issue. And I can expand upon that if you want. I have no problem doing that. But I don't think they're UFOs, definitely not. I don't think that has any connection to it. But yeah, I don't recommend Enoch being incorporated into Christianity, for obvious reasons. And you can check out the video for more on there. But yeah, I also, with regards to Genesis 6, I don't think the Nephilim are anything supernatural. And I think there's a lot of internal evidence that shows that.
Cool. All right. Benjamin again. Also, do you think the reason why God doesn't physically reveal himself is because he wants his creatures to use philosophy and science to know him through those methods?
I would recommend the book Until We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis, which talks about that basically his idea is that the reason why we can't see God is because we don't have faces yet. Now that sounds kind of silly, but it's a very deep philosophical inquiry into the whole issue. There's another guy, I did a video a couple years ago called On the Divine Hiddenness Question. And I referred to a scholar named Paul Moser who talks about what God really wants is not just basic belief that he exists. He wants cognitively robust theism. You worship and love God for who he is. What would happen if Zeus just revealed himself to us right now? Would we go, oh, okay, I love him now. He's the Lord of my life. I just want to follow him. No, it'd be like, okay, there's Zeus in the sky. What are we going to do about this? I hope he doesn't hit me with lightning bolts. Maybe if I try to please him, he won't hit me with lightning bolts and then I can survive. He'd become an idol. He'd become someone we try to please for our own selves, not because we want to please him. And so C.S. Lewis's idea in the book is that we are so corrupt, we're so sinful, we're so selfish. If God revealed himself, we turn him into some sort of giant genie in the sky, or we try to please him to get safety or pleasure or power. We wouldn't actually follow him because we want to love him. So God is using this hiddenness gap right now to turn us into cognitively robust, mature theists, people who love and worship God for who he is. We can come to learn who he is without worrying about if he's going to zap us, or we can use him for pleasure or power or whatever we want. So it's a much more complicated issue. I recommend that book and I recommend my video for more.
That's so awesome. Yeah, the divine hiddenness question, I think for me personally, is stronger than the argument from evil. I don't think we recognize evil without a God, but the question in times of pain and suffering, which are connected to that, come up like, why am I not closest to God in visibility? I wish I could see him like I see my Father. And I think just from a pastoral point of view, which I said I wasn't going to interrupt these questions towards Michael, I just want people to know that we can look back at the faithfulness of God in the times of physically being hidden. We can read through the stories that God was there emotionally, spiritually touching people's life, right, Michael? Like there is still a presence of the Lord that is in the Christian's life. Yeah, that's just from a pastoral point of view, which nobody's asking. Nobody's asking me those questions. We're going for the deep stuff. Okay, here it is. Is Jesus the angel of the Lord in the Old Testament? Yes? Okay.
Sorry, what? I think you kind of broke up there. Can you say that again? Is Jesus the angel of the Lord of the Old Testament? Yeah, so angel in the Old Testament doesn't mean like an angelic being. Angel means messenger. The word is actually messenger there. So is Jesus the angel of the Old? I think he is. It's sometimes the angel of the Lord refers to himself as Yahweh, speaks as if he is Yahweh. That's in Genesis 22, for example. It is in Exodus 3. For example, it says, the angel of the Lord is who appeared in the bush and then spoke from the bush. And what does the angel say? I am that I am. Okay, that's, I would say, definitely is a physical form of the second person of the Trinity, who is Jesus.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. We also know the residence of the Spirit was in paradise. It wasn't until Jesus finished the work that when we died, our spirit was instantly moved to heaven. We also see a manifestation of Moses and Elijah when paradise was still in the belly of the earth. I don't know where that came from and all that's being said there. I think we're missing some context. Do you understand what that is? Is that a question? Is that a comment? Okay, we're moving past that. Okay. All right, Brian, we're going to try you one more time, or Byron, whatever one it is. The spiritual laws seem to have been different with paradise than heaven. I don't know what he's talking about. Do you, in any way?
And if he's referring to Eden, I mean, spiritual laws, I mean, I feel like I need a lot of terms here to find.
Yeah, please, Brian or Byron, whatever it is, please just clarify that question. I would love to answer it. Okay, Lovert Mays, it has come up a few times in my ministry. What is Michael's take on the myth of Lilith, Adam's supposed first wife?
Yeah, Lilith comes from very late sources that postdate Jesus. I think 3rd century is when she first starts showing up in Talmudic Jewish literature. There's no evidence of her actually being incorporated in the original story. It's like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. It's a much, much later story that's obviously not part of the original things that happened. It's extremely late. I believe Lilith comes from like an Akkadian word for a demon that was actually incorporated. There actually was a demon that had a similar name in the Mesopotamian area. And I think my history is a little rough here, but I think that demon somehow was like responsible for snatching children or something in that sort of sense. But the Lilith of the Jewish sense doesn't come to, I think, 3rd or 4th century. It's very late. It's definitely nothing that would be original or part of the original Israelite works that would have come, that would give us the Old Testament.
Boom. All right. Thoughts on the serpent seed doctrine?
Yeah, so the serpent seed doctrine is this idea that people become the seed of the serpent and not the seed of Adam or of Christ in that sort of sense. It's metaphorical. It just means someone becomes a sinner or was a rebellious. Cain became the seed of the serpent. Ham became the seed of the serpent. Technically, the point of Genesis 1 through 11 is to show us how all humanity has abandoned God and has now become the seed of the serpent from Genesis 3. I talk about that a lot in my Genesis 1 to 11 series. It's in one of my playlists. Just go there and check it out. I bring it up a lot. And that's what's so important about Isaac's birth, because the point the authors of Genesis are trying to tell us is that all of humanity has become the seed of the serpent. So what does God do? Well, he takes somebody who is barren, can't have children, and he gives them a miraculous birth. He essentially he's Abraham's son, but he is of miraculous origin because God caused that to happen. So a new family begins that is not from the seed of the serpent. And that's the really important theological point about Isaac.
Yeah, you know what? I see a lot of similarities between you and the Bible Project. Have you ever met with those guys?
No, I've never met with them, but they should totally promote my videos.
Yeah, dude, because you guys bring up a lot of that, especially when it came to the serpent and the seraphim. You touch on that too, that this might not even have been a real serpent talking, how we've looked at it, which I still kind of lean towards that, but you look at it as serpentine, and that seraphim are on serpentine qualities, right? Like we can go down the whole rabbit trail there. But where did you get into the research there? Is it Michael Heisner? Hessner? Yeah, go ahead. Actually,
Ben Stanhope, who's a scholar that was helping a lot with my Genesis series, did a video about it, and that's what sort of made me interested in the whole idea. So also, I know John Walton talks about it. Him and I disagree on this whole thing, but he thinks the Genesis serpent was like a chaos creature. I say it was a rebellious seraphim, like an actual seraph and rebelled. And the way seraphs are described in ancient iconography as well as in the Bible are like serpent-like.
Yeah, and that's very similar to Michael Heisner. Is it Heisner or Hessner? How am I saying this? Which way? Heisner. Okay, got it.
No, not
Heiser.
Yeah, Heiser, no N.
No, got it. Is it possible that the angel of the Lord is Michael?
No, well, it depends. I mean, some people think Michael is just another a pre-incarnation form of Jesus. I don't think so, because I think the way the New Testament talks about him is it's just another angelic type creature. So I don't think the angel of the Lord is Michael. I think Michael is some sort of just angelic being in that kind of sense. He's a created deity.
Yeah,
Not a deity.
Yeah, and I'll put up Sam's notes on that. With he does the work in Daniel to show that it can't be the one that's known as the angel of the Lord. There's many angels coming from the Lord. One of them is named Michael, and I'll put up Sam's article on that. Can anything material create anything immaterial?
It depends on what we mean and how those terms are defined. I don't think so. I mean, that if physicalism is true, yeah, because you could say that the material creates a mind, and then we can think of abstract objects and they would be immaterial in that kind of sense. But it's very hard to get to that type of conclusion. So I would say no, especially as an idealist.
All right, cool. And I got that link here from Sam. You guys check it out. Sam definitely has dealt with Jehovah's Witnesses and others who try to make that connection. And then there are Trinitarians, Seventh-day Adventists, who will believe Michael's just like another name for Jesus or a pre-incarnate version of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't work. Okay. Are you familiar with Donald Hoffman's work?
Yeah, he comes up a lot in my Irreducible Mind series on my channel.
There's a guy that I just wish I could ask you about him, but I guess it's not that important that I can't remember his name. He's been doing, I think, the best promoting of the irreducible mind concept. I think he's a Spaniard. He's from Spain. If I think of him, I'll send you a thought. I'll bring it up here. But yeah, you're not alone in this. You're basically, is Daniel Hoffman even a Christian? Because there's a lot of non-Christians dealing with this, right?
Yeah, it was like Bernardo Kastrup. I think that's who you're thinking of.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, none of these people are Christians.
Yeah. Some of them are a little new agey though, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And that's where I disagree with them.
Yeah. How do you spell his last name? I just want to make sure it's the guy.
Kastrup. Bernardo Kastrup.
Yep. Dude, look at you, man. You even helped me find the reference here. I'll put it up for people to see. Would you recommend this guy's work? Let me ask you like a bigger question. Does this kind of work being done by non-Christians help us if we look into it, or should we wait for you? And I don't want this to mean like we're being lazy as Christians, but should we wait for someone that's a little bit more trusted in the field to kind of disseminate it for us? Or do you think it's good for us to kind of just dive in there and try to figure it out through our Christian worldview?
Yeah, of course. I want people to dive in and research this stuff. I don't want people just to rely on me to tell them what to think. I want people to research this. I mean, my disagreement with Kastrup is he tries to say the consciousness behind the universe is not really a self-aware being. And I'm like, that just seems like an oxymoron. Like if you're consciousness, you are self-aware. I feel like so. I would disagree with him on that.
Yeah, exactly. There's an inner contradiction in there. Okay. IP, what are your thoughts on Quentin Smith, a theological cosmological argument?
It's been a while since I've read him, so I apologize. I would need to look more into him. It's been a while since I've read Quentin Smith. I've been doing a lot more of Old Testament research as of late, so I don't want to misrepresent anything he has said.
Okay, right on. Austin, going back to what we were talking about. Yeah, he says he's an illusion, but he's writing a book. Sorry, I'm that behind on question, guys. We're getting into them here. I would love a convo between Michael and Josh Rasmussen. You guys hang out?
Oh, yeah. I talked to him. He wrote a recommendation so I could get into graduate school, so he's been very helpful.
Yeah, maybe Cam can have you guys both on, have some fun. Okay. Here's the hardest question I can think of. How, in practical terms, can someone overcome a powerful sin addiction?
It depends on the sin addiction. I mean, it depends on what you're addicted to. I always encourage people to get into this may sound simple, but get into the Word. Read the Bible. Don't just neglect it. Try your best to unite yourself with Christ in thought, take every thought captive and submit it to the Lord. It's a struggle. It's not going to happen overnight, but that's the way to do it. It's to reflect on the things of Christ, not on the things of this world. And don't think you can do it just by being good, or don't think you're going to somehow work your way out of it. Let Christ work your way out of it. And instead, you focus on doing his will and doing what he wants you to do.
Amen. Amen. What is your take on Shiloh from Genesis 49:10? As some Muslim scholars use it as a prophecy about Muhammad. If he is Jesus, then wasn't Jesus from the tribe of Judah?
Well, let's look at that up. I'll pull up the verse, so I can read it, because I'd like to actually read it. So it says, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler or staff from between his feet, until the tribes come to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the people." Okay, well, I don't know why this would be Muhammad. I mean, the scepter didn't depart. It departed from Judah, technically, when the temple was destroyed. So, I mean, you could make the argument that this is about Jesus. Like, I don't understand why this would be about Muhammad. It has no relation to a guy from Arabia. And if it's talking about, so Judah is the lion's cub, from the prey of my son you've stooped the line. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribes come to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. I mean, that doesn't sound like anything like it's to do with Islam. It could be interpreted, one, to refer to Jesus and when the temple was destroyed. It could refer to David's kingdom, about the tribes coming to him. I mean, I don't understand why this would have to be about Muhammad. It seems like it'd be much of a stretch to get there.
Yeah, I'm even trying to think through it as well. This is the brother that's obviously in a place where Muslims abound. So I don't know if he's heard it a certain way. Because I can't even see how they would use it. But then again, Muslims take the most bizarre things, like the prophecies of the Holy Spirit, and apply it to Muhammad, and a Christian is just baffled. This is another one of those things that I guess unless you heard them enunciate it and get passionate and intense, it would have really no power, because just reading it doesn't point to him in any way. And I think it does point to Jesus as well. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to look more I'd have to look more at commentaries on this and try to understand the actual language and what's being said here. I know a lot of this this prophecy is referring a lot to like the oh, okay. This is I see what's going on here now. I just remembered. So this is Jacob's blessing of Joseph's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And this is not referring to Jesus, so that's my mistake. It's referring to when the kingdom is divided. The scepter departed from Judah, and the tribes went to under Ephraim, because Ephraim was ruling in the northern kingdom. So it's talking about that. Judah was ruling in the south, but the majority of the tribes went, and they went with Ephraim in the north under Jeroboam, because that's the tribe he was from. So this is a prophecy about a descendant of Ephraim. This has nothing to do with anything beyond that.
Yeah, I'm looking at the commentaries as well. I can't see anything different than that.
Yeah,
Shiloh
I don't know why
simply means one to whom it belongs. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know why they would get that. This is clearly about when the kingdom's divided.
Yep. Okay, let's come out of that. Yeah, and it's funny if you're debating or having a discussion with someone and they bring up something so just out there, and we as Christians are expected, to keep up with them. And then when we step back and go, hold on, let me look at it, they almost use it as an I got you, you don't know everything. Here, look, I got you. And we're just baffled going, we have no idea how you're reading that, so give us a moment to read it ourselves. And I'm glad that Michael really takes his time to do that.
Yeah, I think it's another question. Departing from Judah and going to it's a prophecy over Judah, but it's talking about when it went to Ephraim. So you have to also read it in relation to when, what I was trying to say earlier, read it in relation to Jacob also blessing Joseph's two sons as well, not just this. So read the context.
Awesome. Michael, why don't you take good pictures?
Because I break cameras. I don't know.
Oh, silly. Okay, brother, we don't know about your eschatology. I don't see many videos on it. So are we living in the end times? What do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I feel like what people mean by the end times, this tribulation, I would call myself a post-millennialist. So no, I don't even hold to those kind of premillennialist ideas.
Okay, just in case someone's watching from my channel, I'm doing a series on Revelation, and I discuss this kind of view that Michael has. And some of my heroes actually believed in certain things that are similar to that position, like John Wesley and others. So when you say post-millennial, do you mean that we establish the kingdom of God? This is the reign of Christ, and then he just simply comes and rules with us as we have established the kingdom? Or do you think that there's
My view is the church age will eventually bring us the millennial kingdom, and then Christ will return. It's the basic idea is that
post-millennial.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you said millennial. Okay, you're post-millennial.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. So yeah, the millennial reign comes after the kingdom of the church, after the kingdom of God has come through the church. Then there's a literal 1,000 years of a bliss, like a.
I don't know if it has to be. It's basically a lot of that stuff could be metaphorical. I don't really get into eschatology a lot because of those problems. Okay. A lot of what's going on is very metaphorical in that sense.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, IP. I see your video on hell. So if an unbeliever dies and sees the Christian God exist, will God let heaven into the person ask? Hell is still a big problem for me.
Check out my brother. Yeah, check out my video. Does God send people to hell? Because I think that is entirely possible. I just think it's very unlikely because people have already made up their minds at that point. Dallas Willard says, "I believe God will let anyone into heaven who can stomach it." So it's this idea that, look, God wants everyone in heaven, but the only people that are in hell are the people that want to be there. The doors of hell are locked from the inside. God is not keeping anyone there. But yeah, check out my video on hell.
Awesome. That's very C.S. Lewis of you. Awesome. Thanks a lot. Okay. How do you deal with Jesus mysticist?
I show them evidence that Jesus existed. There's so many external sources that say Jesus existed, and Paul talks about him as a historical person, says he was a descendant from David, says he was born of a woman, he had a brother. I mean, there's just a lot of evidence that Jesus existed as a person. I don't even understand why there are Jesus mysticists. Their explanation is incredibly ad hoc. It just doesn't make any sense. Did I lose you? I think you're muted.
Oh, oops. Sorry about that. I'm looking at Craig Keener's work here on the NIV Cultural Backgrounds Study Bible. Have you ever met Craig Keener?
No, I don't think I've met him, but I have talked to him through email occasionally.
Okay, very cool. So he's a nice guy, just like yourself. I would say he's probably the only one who I think can out-nerd you on research, but it would have to be a battle to the death there, in other words, because you guys are both just amazing at it. And he just was just referencing exactly what you were saying, that Judah has the undivided inheritance. It's getting split up, etc. But then coming back to the lion here being Christ. Yeah, it all points to Christ, nothing towards Muhammad, right? I mean,
right.
That's confirmed now. I think that's pretty simple.
On the Judah, idea that the best way to deal with Jesus mysticists really quickly is that Galatians 4:4 says Jesus was born of a woman. Romans 1:4 says Jesus was a descendant of King David. Galatians 1:19 says he had a brother named James. 2 Corinthians 13:4 says Jesus was crucified. 1 Corinthians 15 says Jesus died and was buried. You got to exist to do that. 1 Corinthians 11 says he had a Last Supper with his disciples. 1 Thessalonians 2 says Jewish authorities were involved in the killing of Jesus. And 1 Corinthians 2 says Jesus died at the hands of earthly rulers. Archons means earthly rulers, according to Romans 13:3 and Matthew 9:23, I believe. Jesus mysticists, it's really funny to watch them go through those verses. Like if you read like Carrier or Price, they come up with all these convoluted ad hoc explanations to get around the fact, because they really need Paul to believe in a celestial Jesus. And it's just, he doesn't. He clearly believes in an earthly Jesus. Here are the verses. Like, get over it.
Yeah, that's the end of our questions, almost at the end of our time. Thank you so much, Michael. Let me just ask you this, because I heard this brought up when Winger debated Delahunty, And Dillahunty and that crew, you know how they come on these debates and they just, put all their chats. They just think that atheists win every single time. But one of the things that they just kept going after over and over is this kind of example that they gave. And I just want to hear you answer it, because I do feel like Michael didn't go as in depth as he could have, but you're only, as us, we're only observing after the fact. And that is, they say something similar to this. Okay, Christians, you can try to prove Jesus by saying this, document says he existed. I can go to a comic and say Spider-Man existed. But then to make your point, you then say, well, we have corroborating evidence. Well, I can say in the Marvel world or whatever, talking about Spider-Man, in the DC world, there's corroborating evidence, Green Lantern, whatever, the Arrow. And so they kind of just go tit for tat with mythology and saying, just because you can find corroboration, if I can say that word right, agreement, just because you can find multiple sources doesn't mean it's necessarily true. And then the last thing is a Christian will go, well, there's real places. So the difference is, in this mythological world of Marvel or DC, you have make-believe places. And so in Bible, we have real places. But then they'll say, oh, but there's certain make-believes that actually have a real New York, but then there's a Godzilla in New York. There's a real, whatever. And so they just try to keep going tit for tat, myth, whatever we point as history. What would you say in a concise way to kind of say, that way of thinking either leads to just, total agnosticism to everything historical, because how would we know anything? I mean, how do you help them see they're putting themselves in their own rabbit trail, rabbit hole?
They make these sweeping generalizations like it actually means something, and they know they would never apply that to any other standard. I could do the same thing with Abraham Lincoln. Oh, you think Abraham Lincoln existed? Well, we have 5 accounts of what the Gettysburg Address was, and they all differ in how they record how he gave that address. Which is the real one? Oh, I guess he probably never existed. And you just have sources that say existed? Sure, but we have sources that say Spider-Man existed. Same thing. You can't make these sweeping generalizations like they do, because they don't want to think about it. If you're going to think about it, you have to understand it in its historical context, the historical sources. Are they written like mythological accounts in that ancient cultural context? No, not at all. They're written far more like biographies, Jewish. They're basically, I would say, they're Jewish. They're Greco-Roman biographies through the lens of a Jew. It's clearly he's using his own Jewish understandings in a lot of ways, but he's trying to write a biography. Okay, that in that kind of context, they're going to rely on historical information and give historical information. A great book is Christobiography by Craig Keener. He notes in that book there are no biographies of recent people that existed that were mythological. So you could get a biography about a mythological person, but they're centuries later from when the person allegedly existed. If you're going to write a recent biography, it's going to try to be most historical as it could possibly be. And the biographies were written within 100 years of Jesus' life. There are no biographies within 100 years of someone who existed that are meant to be mythological, that are meant to be exaggerating things. They're trying to get to the truth of things. So read that book, Christobiography. It's actually really good. There's a lot of good information in there. So yeah, once again, when Dillahunty and other people do this, they're taking a sweeping generalization, which is a logical fallacy they would never apply to any other historical source. Apply that to the people Tacitus mentions. Are we going to do that? How about other people Josephus mentions, like Honi the Circle Drawer, or like the Athrongus Rebellion, or the Judas the Galilean revolts? There's all. Are we going to just do the same thing? No, that would be silly. But that's what they're doing. They're making silly arguments.
Yeah, and it's something how the atheist community, maybe you could just talk about that in our final moments. Like that's what you're dealing with a lot of. How is it we can both go to our jobs, we can both do things in the real world and understand how the world works, but then they make up some type of nonsensical, basically agnostic position on every possible knowable thing of history. And they think that's the best argument ever. Like we could be like, I love, David Wood, when he debated Michael Shermer. Did you ever do the debate with Michael Shermer? Did that ever happen?
I just did this month.
Oh, awesome. So it's online right now. We can all watch it.
Yeah, it's on Modern Day Debate. Yeah, we just did it like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah, I've just been on vacation, so I can't wait to check in on that. But yeah, David Wood had the skeptic-o-meter. I don't know if you've seen that little graph. I mean, that little tool that he has. It's, a little meter, goes from 0 to 10, and basically it's like when the atheist is debating Christianity, they put it all the way to 10. But then when they're talking about every other person, they put it to 1 or 2, reasonably, to 3 or something like that. Yeah, and I think you help do that so well when people share your videos, and we appreciate all that work you put into. So everyone likes, subscribe. You guys are already probably doing that. We're also going to bless him for his time with us because I appreciate him coming out. But yeah, Michael does such a good job, right, of showing people they're being reduced to irrationality at certain points of their argument. So how did it go before you let us go here today with Michael Shermer? How do you think that went?
As soon as it was over, when someone first watched it, they sent me a message and they said that was a bloodbath. So I
can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. He didn't really come prepared, I felt like, unfortunately, which is a shame because I've been trying to debate him for over a year. So I've been preparing for over a year. But I don't think he really knew anything about me until he was in that room debating me. And I think I caught him off guard in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's what I felt with Dillahunty and Aaron Ra. They thought they were going to deal with the same kind of arguments they've been getting, and you rocked them. Alexander wanted to say thank you for all the work you do.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, man. What can we look forward to with your channel? What are some of the goodies for those who watch this? What do we want to know about Inspiring Philosophy?
My next video will be on the archaeological location of Sodom and Gomorrah. Then I'll do a video on the Genesis Philistines, where they why Genesis mentions Philistines in the land, because some people say they shouldn't be there yet. I'll do a video on the archaeological evidence that Jesus was buried and the historical evidence as well, mostly historical evidence. Ooh. Then I'll do a video on Jacob and Joseph in Egypt. Short little video on the stone that was put in front of there. And then my Exodus documentary is coming out. Followed by that, I'll be doing a video on a 40-minute video on the census of Quirinius and why Luke may be right in his dating of it.
Is there anything else you're doing?
Yeah, after that, I'll be doing a video on Gilgamesh and why Genesis didn't copy Gilgamesh. So yeah, that as well. I mean, I got a lot of stuff coming up.
Yeah, bro, we just love you. I'm sure all these people here are thinking, my goodness, how does your mind contain all of that? So what do? You just take on some books and go to a subject one at a time, or do you do multiples at a time? Like, how do you go through all of that?
A magician never reveals their secrets.
Okay. And on that note, I'll give,
Yeah.
I'll give your shout outs. They're here for you, man. Give them your shout outs and we'll end this live feed.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate everyone coming for studying. I mean, I just read books with highlighters and I go back and I read my highlights again. So I just try to do that a lot.
Awesome. Thank you guys for coming from his channel. And if you think of us, think of those who came originally to this witchcraft channel that I had, that we brought Michael on for. Pray for the witches, the pagans, the Vikings, these people to come to Christ. We love you guys. Have a great day.